Hello and welcome to the next MCU panel discussion and review. Of course, this time we're starting Phase 2 with Iron Man 3, the most divisive film in the franchise, would you say?
No.
No? Oh,
Probably
okay.
not.
Oh,
One
that's
of,
what-
but not the most.
It's definitely not the most, but it is one of, yeah.
Okay, well, most divisive out of the ones I've seen.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
probably, yeah.
But that being said, I've probably only seen a quarter of the
You probably.
I've seen about 8 out of 22.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it'll be a third. But yeah, all right, that's interesting then. But yeah, at one of the most divisive. How about that? Yeah.
That works, yeah.
All right
Yeah.
then. Sorry, I might. I'm just going off what I've heard. But anyway, without mucking around any longer, patreon.com/Genesis Avengers Army. If you'd like to contribute to this channel and help us out, that'd be great. There's multiple tiers you can choose from. They allow you to things like exclusive access to videos, as well as early access to our YouTube stuff, and also Master Tier, where you get to choose a video for us to do. Twitter.com/Genesis Avengers Army if you'd like to get in contact with us. And if you know me personally on Facebook, just message me, especially if you want to get into one of these panel discussions, because we'd love to have any of you on that would like to talk about these movies. But yeah, that's all the plugs. Today I've got not Callum, the first one, because he's started work again and he's not going to be here on any of the weekend ones anymore.
Disappointing.
But I think he'll be on every... I think he said he can do Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday.
All right.
So at least he'd be on half. But we do have Adam from the channel, who's back, who was supposed to be on Avengers, but his phone just didn't work.
No, Skype died for me yesterday.
Oh well, but you brought it back, and
Yes, I
and of
resurrected
course, Anthony's back, who was on the Avengers one.
We're
Hey.
Phase 2, baby.
That's the one.
Yes, and Anthony specifically, when Anthony first heard about this MCU series, he told me specifically Iron Man 3 was the one he wanted to be on out of any of them.
I have strong opinions on this movie.
Yes.
Mm.
So
Can I just ask, before we start, you a big fan of the comics?
Yeah, I do follow, not necessarily like, I dabble in the Iron Man comics.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting. Okay, well, we'll get onto that further, I'm sure. But
yeah.
I'm sure you know where I'm going with that. But yeah, all right. Interesting.
okay, but without further ado, we might as well sort of get into what I call the sort of 2-minute initial thoughts on this movie. So I think, seeing as Anthony has basically yammed his opinion about this movie down my throat for the last few years, I think thankfully without spoiling it, which was great, I think you should get it off your chest and tell the world what you think of Iron Man 3 in 2 minutes.
All right. So, going into this film, I am aware there is a big divide on this one. And personally, I think I know why. I think rewatching it today, I kind of saw everything and I was like, right, I know what people are like. That was cool. That was horrible. Why the hell would they change that? Why would they do this? The main thing being the whole villain, the whole reveal that the Mandarin is actually a hired actor. Oh, it's Trevor Slattery. He's not real. He's just some drunk hobo, whatever. Killian hired him. He's a hobo. It's the Mandarin never existed. I think, I'm pretty sure. I'm certain, in fact. That's the main, the big main one that people were like, what? What have you done? Because in the comics, the Mandarin is he's pretty damn strong, if I may say so. Probably not up there with Thanos, but he's a big threat.
As in terms of Earth-based villains, from what I can recall, he is pretty, he's serious business.
Yeah, absolutely. He also, I wanted to point out, Connor, I don't know if you saw it, in Iron Man 1, when those terrorists are taking Stark hostage, they do have the symbol of the Ten Rings that showed up again in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I always love it when these movies especially do that because they seem to pick it up later, and they do that more. Kind of reference past films, they'll reference future films too, which is awesome. But yeah, I do love one of the things I love of this movie is the character development of Iron Man, Tony Stark himself. He's coming out of the Avengers. Obviously, he saved the whole world. He chucked a nuke back into this portal up into space. He's never been into space. It was his first time. He didn't have a space suit or anything either.
Just try and wrap it up quickly, if you can.
Yeah. So what I don't enjoy is the villain reveal. What I do enjoy is that character development.
Okay, then. Adam, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, my phone was just spazzing out, but yes, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, you're back. Right. Okay, your turn. 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm just going to get this out of the way right off the bat. This is my favorite Iron Man film. I
Isn't it yours
really
as well?
enjoy this film.
Yeah, I concur. I agree.
Sorry. Oh, really? It's. I think.
Is that
Tony
are you talking specifically the Iron Man singular film?
Yes, 2 and 3, the Iron Man trilogy, and even I'll count Avengers in that as well. I think
really?
this is actually
What, you like this film more than Avengers?
I think not necessarily, but I do think this is a better Iron Man film than Avengers.
Right. Yeah, all right.
Because he's one, obviously, because they're all the leads, but he's like the core of it in Avengers. But this Iron Man 3, in terms of what it does to progress the character and make him more human, and the fact that the way it ends with him destroying his suits, I get why a lot of people were sort of frustrated by that, but I really enjoyed the kind of symbolic nature of that, where by him realizing, no, he doesn't need to be dependent on his suits. He's got his mind. The big sections of the film where he's got a handmade taser from like a mitten that he's done and he's just wired up with some coil. Those are some of my favorite Iron Man scenes in the entire franchise. I absolutely love it. And also his interactions with all the other characters just seem, because Shane Black, I mean, The Predator sucks, but most of the time Shane Black is a really good filmmaker, and that shows. This is a Shane Black film, and I really appreciate that. It just was a great evolution for Iron Man, and I don't like necessarily that they didn't have the Mandarin, but I fucking love Trevor Slattery. Those are my 2 cents.
Okay. Well, I guess it's my turn, isn't it?
Here we go. I've been waiting for this one.
Yeah. I will start by saying I don't think it was a good idea for me to watch this at 1 a.m, because that's what I did. So I will say in that regard, the second half of this movie was slightly what's the word? It was impaired by my tiredness. But I don't think I missed any crucial points necessarily. There's a couple of times where I closed my eyes, but then I woke up like 5 seconds later. It's a couple of moments just because it was so late at night. But I think as far as I remember, because I just before this, just in case, I did skim over like the second half of the movie, just skimmed over little bits of it just to see if there's any scenes I missed, and then there wasn't anything that I remember missing. So I think I saw the entire story. But I think what I will say about this film is that I think overall I have mixed feelings on it. And they're maybe not what other people would say, because the Mandarin reveal, whilst very strange, that's not the issue I had with this film mainly. Because that was a weird sort of subversion, but I didn't hate it. Where this film fails for me is in Act 3. I find the whole villain plot to be very strange, and for me, I think the biggest weakness for me with the 3 Iron Man films is the villains. They really just don't captivate me at all. Like, Obadiah Stane was the same. As soon as he turned into Ironmonger, it just fell flat on its face.
It does drop, yeah.
Whiplash was the same, and I would say the same for what was his name again? The
Aldrich Killian.
Yeah. Whilst I think in terms of the character stuff in the early part of the film, I like that stuff. In terms of just Act 3 itself, everything just felt so comic book, and it didn't feel like a fitting end to this particular movie. But on the other hand of that, the first half of this movie I think is fantastic. I think literally the first hour of this movie, there's a very small amount of it that I would even critique. I think it's fantastic. It's just the second half that I'm not sure about. But we'll get into the details of it. But yeah, I came out of it feeling very bittersweet, I'd say.
Right.
Yeah. Not sure. Really not sure.
Interesting.
Definitely. I tell you what, though. I would say it's better than Iron Man 2. It's at least that good.
Yes.
Yeah, no, Iron Man 2 is, I think it's generally received as, like, the worst of the three. It's kind of like the smaller, shittier brother of the three, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, and it's funny because in the review I was talking about how much I sort of, even though it was quite sloppy, I did enjoy it. But if you watch the end of the Avengers review, I'm not sure if you have, Adam. I've actually put. Well, I guess I'm kind of spoiling you for the review, but it doesn't really matter. I've actually ranked it slightly below First Avenger now. Thinking back on it,
good. Because First Avenger is underrated.
Yeah, no, I know, right? This dude, Adam knows what he's talking about.
First Avenger is really Winter Soldier. We'll talk about that in Winter Soldier. Anyway.
Yeah. But,
save it for Carl.
But I was just looking.
He's gonna see that one.
After watching Avengers, I was looking back on all the movies, and even though I enjoyed Iron Man 2 more than First Avenger, I feel like First Avenger is a better story. But then you get it's strange because Iron Man 3 is so different to Iron Man 2 in almost every way. They're like completely different universes. It's very weird. In terms of tone, in terms of characters, everything. It was a shock to the system to watch. And I think what we'll do is, I think we should jump right in to the characters, starting with Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, who, in my opinion, is always the star of these films. Regardless of the story, I think he's always been my favorite part of Iron Man, as he should be. I would say my favorite part of his character in this film, and it's one that does hit home a bit, is his anxiety.
I knew you were going to say that, yeah.
Yeah. And it was...
You just I didn't hear what you said. My connection just cut out. I didn't hear what you said.
I was talking about his anxiety. Did you hear what I said then?
Nope, it just cut out again.
His anxiety.
Yes, anxiety. Got you now.
Yeah. And the reason why is because currently I'm being treated for the same thing. So I can actually empathize with him in this film. And I can actually get alongside him because I know what it's like. And I think that was just, in terms of the timing, the fact that I watched this movie right now is kind of perfect in terms of Tony Stark's character, I would say. And I would also say one of my favorite scenes in the entire MCU is when his house gets bombed.
Yeah.
That sequence.
It's a pretty kind of dynamic scene in itself. Just seeing it, because in the first two movies, obviously, it's like, oh, whenever he's in a rut or he's in, something's gone wrong, he goes back to his big mansion and with his 10 cars. And it's like a 5-story house on the lake, on the beach side or whatever, And in this one, it's like, yeah, that's blown up too. That's gone as well. What does he have left,
Mm.
And sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say you know how we were talking in the Avengers about when someone says something and later on it comes back to them?
Yeah.
Because it's
This
it's
is
scripted,
literally happens in this movie where he was talking to Jarvis about this going to this area to check it out, and then he sets his Iron Man suit to do so, and then when he gets bombed, his Iron Man suit takes him there, and then
Yeah.
Mm.
like
He
that was
wakes up and goes, "Where are we?" He goes, "Oh, we're in Missouri. You set the course."
that's brilliant storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to think, like, because there's a lot that happens with Tony in this movie, a lot.
Yeah. It is a very character-driven film. This one.
Yeah. I'm kind of struggling for words, so I think one of you should start talking about it.
I just want to bring up the point of the anxiety. It's a very relatable topic to myself as well. But the scene specifically where the house blows up, there's lots of little visual things that are really nice in this film. When he's underwater and he's basically being crushed by his house, it's sort of again ties into this idea that there's Tony Stark and there's Iron Man.
Sorry, we didn't quite. I didn't quite get what you said. Oh no.
Hang on, bear with.
What's happened? Oh no, you've crashed. Oh, Adam XC has crashed.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I've just moved closer to the router, so hopefully the connection's a bit better. But basically, what I was saying was that this film is all about how Iron Man and Tony Stark are kind of two separate entities, and it's him coming to the realization that Iron Man doesn't exist. It is Tony Stark. He is that person, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
with the house, I kind of take it as he is literally being crushed under the weight that everything that this facade of who he is represents. You know, the wealth and all his fancy cars and just, you know, all this excess that he lives to hide his own anxieties and his own fears. He's literally being crushed under the weight of that. And from memory, the suit comes down and saves him. So it's like a visual representation of Iron Man saving Tony Stark because they are one and the same, if you know what I mean. I know it sounds kind of wanky, but that's kind of what I got out of it.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's lots of little bits like that I really enjoy in this film. Shane Black's direction and writing has a lot of subtlety to it that I really appreciate.
Yeah, there's something I noticed about this film. It's the style of the storytelling is so different to Jon Favreau.
Yes.
Yep.
Anthony, what have you got to add to this?
No, I like how with the use of the anxiety, they've made the character of Tony Stark a much more relatable character. I think in especially in Avengers, it was kind of like because he's everyone's favorite in Avengers because he's this funny dude. You know, we've seen 2 of his movies because it's Iron Man and everyone goes to see those movies. But Iron Man 3, what it does is it's like, yes, he's a billionaire and he's a playboy and he's a philanthropist and he's Iron Man, but he also has these anxiety issues, and it's like you were saying, Adam. He doesn't see himself as Iron Man. He doesn't see himself as a hero.
Yeah.
It's like that's a suit, literally and figuratively. That's a suit he puts on, and he goes and saves the world. And that's also when he's in the bar with Rhodey, like near the beginning, and the kid asks him to sign, their drawing. And in the picture, it's not a picture of him; it's a picture of him in the suit flying up with the missile. He sees it as that's not me, that's not me in the drawing. That's someone else. It's Iron Man, the hero, not me.
But then you get that poetic line at the end. The whole "I am Iron Man" line gets repeated again with a new meaning.
Yeah.
Like he literally, in the first time, it was him revealing to the world, "I am Iron Man. I am the superhero that you know."
Whereas in this one,
Whereas this one, it's him telling himself, I
Yeah.
am Iron Man.
Yeah.
We are one and the same.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the biggest compliment I can give Iron Man 3 is Tony Stark's character development.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um and that's something that has been consistent throughout all three of the films, I would say. But I guess we should get on to other characters so we can flesh out our sort of views on the story.
Yeah.
So Pepper Potts, is this the film where she gets like the most screen time? I think it is.
Possibly, yeah. Because she has that whole thing at the end where it's like, oh, she's dead. Oh, jokes, she's not dead.
Yeah, that was a bit. Oh, this film, like not as aggravatingly, but this film gave me flashbacks to The Last Jedi with all its like plot twists. There was so many, and like I guess the Mandarin would be like the Snoke moment. There's so many moments where it's just like you thought it was this, but it's not.
That's really interesting you said that. I had the same thought, but with the humor in this movie.
Right.
Because I was watching it, and like, there's a sequence, I think, before the house gets blown up, when he's just bought the massive rabbit for Pepper, and Maya Hansen has arrived as well, and they're kind of like riffing off one of each other. I kind of thought this is a lot of jokes in like one scene, and then in my head I'm like, but as a character, like the character of Iron Man, that works. You know what I mean? He's someone who doesn't really take anything too seriously, and he's just like, oh yeah, this is whatever, I don't care.
Yeah, well, I would say the same for the plot twists. They were very subversive, and I just don't know how I feel about them. They didn't make me feel terrible. I didn't get angry. I just got so lost.
Right.
You know? And I think that
Yeah.
that Pepper Potts twist to me, like not just her falling, like because the scene where she falls is so fast, and I was like, if this was any other movie, this would be in slow motion. And because it's so sudden, I was like, because it was so sudden, I was like, no, she's coming back.
Just
I
like,
knew it.
wait,
I knew
what?
it as soon as I saw it. And then she comes back, and I was like, well, that's a bit weird.
You were like, well, I knew that was going to happen, so there's no emotional value lost or gained or anything.
Yeah, it was just very spontaneous, and I didn't get it. Didn't get it at all. Just felt like it was done just to add tension to the finale, of Act 3.
Yeah.
But one thing I will say about Pepper Potts in this film, it's interesting because in Iron Man 2, Tony Stark had like a distraction in Natasha. But in this film, she has the distraction, but the distraction is actually the villain of the film.
Right.
That was interesting that they went with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it may just be because I watched it so late, but like I am struggling to remember exactly the details of the story. It's a tough one because I remember how I felt when watching it, but I don't remember exactly what happens in every scene.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies where it's like that. Whereas and it's interesting. It's interesting I say that because the direction of this film is very striking, but the actual story points don't stick with me like the other films do. Like with the Avengers, I watched that 2 days ago, and I can remember the entire thing off. Like I can literally read off to you what happened. Whereas with this film really tossed and turned my brain so much that I find it hard to talk about.
Yeah.
What did you think of Pepper Potts in this film, Anthony?
I don't know. Because I like the character, of Iron Man, Tony Stark. I like whenever they give him a more just backstory, or kind of like they flesh his character out more. And in this film, I think they did that by fleshing out the character of Pepper. It
Yeah.
kind of makes you appreciate what he appreciates, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, you can kind of see what he sees in her, and why he feels how he feels. When he tells her, the one thing I'm trying to protect is you, and if I can't keep that safe, then I don't. You know what I mean? It's like you understand a bit more about the character of Iron Man.
I mean,
You get
the thing
his
is,
vulnerability more.
the thing
Yeah.
is about that is that I would agree when it comes to the first half of the movie, but not the second.
Yeah.
Because
I
in the
think
first half of the movie, those sequences in the house, like when she gets stroppy with him because he's being an idiot, but then he admits to her he has anxiety, and then you get like there's that nightmare he has where the suit almost like kills her.
Yeah.
That stuff's all great, but then when it gets to the climax of the film, that's just when it falls for me. I just don't understand what I'm supposed to feel. It just feels so. It feels so comic book compared to how complex the first act is.
Yeah, I do think what they were trying to go for, right, was you see this first half where it's like he's freaking out and the suit comes and it immediately it doesn't really attack, but it kind of grabs Pepper, and he immediately wakes up and he's like, power down, turn off, holy shit, are you okay? So then when you get to the third act and she's the one in danger and he's freaking out, you can kind of understand it because she's the one who's like looking after him. He's a broken dude, his anxiety, he's got PTSD of the what happened in Avengers, and she's there for him, and he knows that she's there for him, and if anything happens to her, that's him, he's just this mess with nothing, no safe, no net under him, you know what I mean?
Okay. What do you want to say, Adam, about Pepper Potts?
Well, the thing is that it's not more of this. In a way, it's more of the same, but it's better because Shane Black is writing her. She's a bit more real feeling, but I do agree that the complexity of her relationship with Tony, as soon as the sort of last 20 minutes, as soon as that hits, it does become a bit typical explosion-y stuff, though there is some great subtext in there still in the final act, specifically with Pepper. Some of that interplay and the complexity of their relationship is somewhat lost by the end of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's just it disappoints me how this film devolves as it goes along.
Yeah.
Because it starts so hot. Like the first half of this film is literally, I love it. I love the first half. It's just the second half. Almost everything in the whole film it feels like it just goes backwards.
Yeah, it does.
Except for a couple of small things, like some of the subtext. But in terms of the actual story itself, it just burns out, and then the end is very similar to the other Iron Man movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just frustrated me a bit because I was so on board to go on this, this completely different route of writing an Iron Man movie, and then it just stopped.
Yeah.
At some point in the middle. James Rhodey Rhodes, aka Iron Patriot. So they changed his name from War Machine to Iron Patriot in this one, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So Adam, I know you were a big fan of the Silver Suit. So how do you feel about the fact that it changed to a Captain America looking thing?
It's actually not. I don't mind the design that much, but one thing I want to give credit to is mixture of CGI and the actual stuntmen and the actors in the suit. When Rhodey is not controlling the suit, when he lands to go into Air Force One?
Yeah.
There's this the physicality of whoever's in that suit is amazing, because if you watch the way they walk, you can tell it's not Rhodey.
Yeah.
There's lots of, but that's a side tangent. As for Rhodey himself, again, he grew. It's kind of more of the same, but a little bit better because Shane Black is writing it. He's got more to do. Obviously, he's not just, you know, a little bit in the beginning, a little bit in the middle, and then in the end. He's actually got a bit more into play, and I like how there's a whole sequence leading up to, even though it does end up being, you know, big explosions and robot battles, leading up to that final part. I like how it's kind of a buddy cop movie for about 15 minutes, where it's just Rhodes and Tony without their suits. I really appreciate that. The relationship between Rhodes and Tony.
It's interesting you say that. It's interesting you say that, because that's the part of the movie I enjoyed the least.
Interesting.
I was bored out of my mind during that sequence. I just wanted it to get over with, because I was just like, by this point in the movie, I was just like, this movie has changed so many times that my head is sore.
Yeah.
And like, if they had gone for like that tone from the start, I would have been fine with it. It's just, it wasn't what this movie was setting out to do from the start, and then it just sort of changed in the middle, and then you got this, and I was like, "What? Wow!"
I guess the reason why I wasn't so surprised when I first watched this is because I knew Shane Black had written Lethal Weapon.
Right. Well, I haven't seen Lethal Weapon. But
Lethal Weapon is basically the most archetypal, very, very good, but the most sort of archetypal buddy cop film you can think of. So I was kind of expecting the Rhodes and Tony relationship to have a bit of that in it, and it became that. But I also like how, Rhodes is still a soldier. Rhodes is you know, he's sticking to his moral ground, but he clearly loves and adores Tony. You know, he wants to protect him, but sometimes he just doesn't know how. You know, but I just love how he's just. His relationship with Tony feels natural. It feels like it's grown naturally. Even though it's, you know, different actors between 1 and 2, it feels like they've just grown closer and closer in a believable way by the point to where they get in Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also just giving Don Cheadle more to do was always good, because I think he's one of the most sort of underrated actors in the entire MCU. Because usually people just sort of think of him as functional, but he's actually, you know, he's got a lot of subtlety to his performance that I really appreciate.
My favorite scene from him overall that I've seen is the start of Iron Man 2 when he's in the courtroom, like that.
And he just tells the audience, "Look, it's me. I'm here. Move on." So
get over with
it's Don Cheadle. Yeah. But I just, the biggest takeaway for me for Rhodes in this movie is his relationship with Tony, as is most of the characters in this film, because obviously this film should more be called Tony Stark as opposed to Iron Man 3. And yeah, I appreciate that. That's much more human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't connect with Rhodes at all. Like, he's fine, but there's nothing about him that makes me want to. If he had a solo film, like, I'd never watch it. There's nothing about him that interests me beyond being Tony Stark's friend that is amusing sometimes.
Interesting.
Because I just don't, like... I think I said this in the first Avenger. I don't care about superheroes that are clean. Like, they just don't interest me at all. It's something that I can only watch once, and then, like, I'm like, well, that happened. Yeah. That's why I'm so endeared to Thor. Because Thor is not like that at all. He's a complete...
He's a jerk.
Like, he starts as a jerk, and he's an alien as well. There's, like, two things about him that are abstract, and the world he lives in is nothing like ours. Whereas the biggest problem I had with First Avenger is it was the same shit that I've already heard 1,000 times about, like, the war and soldiers and America, and I'm just like, I don't care. I've heard this before. Move on. And I get the same thing with Rhodes. He's a very authoritative, sensible, well-mannered, you know, nice guy who does the right thing, and that doesn't really do anything for me. except for the fact that he's Tony Stark's friend. And it's the same, and it was a similar thing about how I enjoyed Captain America the most when he's against Tony Stark, because I like the battle they have. It's just by himself, I just didn't find him that great in First Avenger. So
fair enough.
I just feel like that kind of character type it's not one that I particularly enjoy.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. So in terms of Rhodey and Iron Man 3, I would say he worked well, but it wouldn't be enough for me to bump up my score for his part of the movie at all.
Right.
What did you think, Anthony? What did you think of Rhodey in this movie?
I like I see the character as just kind of like a bantering point, more banter in a sense, for Tony Stark. But it's kind of, but this time it's personal. You know, they're best friends. They've known each other obviously for a long time now. I'm going to disagree with you, Connor. The buddy cop part where they're on, right at the end, you know, when they're like the extremist people. I really like that scene where it's like Tony says something like, "I'm gonna do a quick head count," and he peeks over, and Rhodes goes, "How many?" He goes, "I don't know. I looked too quick." I don't know.
I will say that the scene where they're falling from the sky is brilliant.
You know, that was done. Obviously, the suit is CGI, but the stunt work was actually done live in camera.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome. But also, like, there's another little moment building on top of that where Rhodes is walking around the ship, and he's got his gun pointed, and he says to Tony, "Your gun's up?" And Tony puts his gun up, and he says, "Yep." Just little moments like that I really appreciate.
Yeah. No, it's things like that. I think in later movies. Oh, not really. I was gonna say in later movies, Tony Stark kind of has other characters to bounce that off of, but I'm just trying to remember.
Well, don't say because I haven't seen them, obviously.
Yeah, no, I wasn't going to. Not that I can remember, but I think as of now, Rhodey is probably one of the best characters that Stark does that with. He just kind of bounces like little jokes like that, and you know, because obviously in canon they're like real close. They can just have little jokes like that between each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, Don Cheadle and Downey Jr.'s chemistry really pops. It's much better than the chemistry between Terrence Howard in the first film.
Yeah. Terrence Howard was very forgettable. Yeah,
it's a shame because Terrence Howard is a good actor, but he just didn't suit the role. And also, I
just don't think that Rhodey's personality fit into this film. He's so in that Favreau, like Iron Man 2 thing, like for me. And the tone of this film I felt like, to me, it felt all about like isolation. And then when he gets paired up with Tony Stark, it just feels like the whole film changes. And it was just honestly really upsetting because I was enjoying what they were going with. And it's interesting I say that because I feel like a lot of people who watch this shit casually would just be like, "Oh, I'm happy he's got his friend back now." Whereas I'm kind of the opposite. Like, that spoiled what I was enjoying about Tony Stark being in his own world.
Right. But what I like about this is, even though it's big monster battle at the end, for the most part, it's kind of the opposite of the ending of Iron Man 2, because Rhodes and Tony are completely stripped back. And that's what I really appreciate about it, is even though, yes, they are reunited, they've got their wits and a gun, basically. That's it. And I really like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough, I guess. Next character is obviously the main villain of this film, which is Eldritch Killian.
Yep.
Ooh. I don't know where to start with this, so I'll let one of you start. Probably Anthony. How about you, Sam?
Yeah. So, going into this, well, my first time seeing this, I had no idea who this character was. Honestly, I couldn't give a shit. It was kind of just like that first sequence in is it Switzerland? They're in Switzerland during
Yeah.
like the 1990s or whatever.
Oh yes, the flashback.
Yeah, I was just kind of like, this, whatever. It's probably focusing on the other character Maya, who's doing the extremist stuff with the plants, which it was, but it was also Killian. But anyway, I digress.
I'll just interrupt for a second. I'll let you finish. I'll let you continue. But I just want to when I saw this movie, I was reminded of The Incredibles, like with Buddy Pine, and then he turns into Syndrome. Like it felt very similar with that.
Yeah.
Where it's like he had a bad experience with his hero, and then turn into a villain against him. Like that reminded me so much of The Incredibles.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can go. Continue.
No, when he shows up later, I think, and he asks Pepper for funding from Stark Industries, and she turns him down. I was kind of like, oh, okay, that was weird, and then it's revealed he's the villain. I was kind of like, oh, that's a shame. But I said before, the Mandarin is a big comic book villain. At that point in time, I didn't know who the Mandarin was in comics either. I had read, briefly about him before I went to see this. And I was like, okay, 10 rings, this, that. No, that's not the case. It's this guy, Aldrich Killian. Actually, when I finished this movie, I kind of thought back and I was like, what was his motivation? Did he have a motivation? You know what I mean?
Probably revenge, I would say.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like revenge is like, okay, that's fine, but come on, this is Marvel. You got to have more than just, I wanted revenge.
Exactly.
It is undercooked. As a character, I think he's quite flat. As an idea, I think there's something really promising there. That is like the flip. That is the flip of Tony in terms of he doesn't really want the public eye, but he wants the power. Whereas Tony doesn't really want power; he just wants the public eye. But that kind of gets muddled.
I think in this film he suffers a bit of Hawkeye syndrome, where for 2/3 of the film you're not supposed to know that he's the villain.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing in Avengers where Hawkeye is in a trance for 2/3 of it, and then he gets once he gets taken away from Loki's power, then his character gets revealed. It's the same thing in this film. You're not supposed to know that he's the villain properly until the Mandarin's not the Mandarin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he might feel a bit undercooked, and also because once he becomes the proper villain, the story devolves.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, because again, it just starts to become about superpower versus, smashy robots after that point, which is really disappointing, because honestly, I would have preferred something to do with,
it's funny
battle of wits.
It's funny because the exact same plot happened in Iron Man 1, except it was with the same character. Like Obadiah Stane and Ironmonger were the same person, but basically you had the same thing, but it was two separate people. So like with Obadiah Stane, you had this villain that was built up to be this really, really manipulative, like this guy, like there's that scene where he paralyzes Tony Stark, and I was like, oh, this guy is fantastic. And then he's Ironmonger.
Yeah, and he's just screaming like a madman, and
just ruins it. And it's like in this film you get the same thing, except instead it's like a fake Mandarin, and then
because the thing is about the fake Mandarin is it's an interesting idea that he's using something to draw the public eye away from himself. Again, he doesn't want that glory. He doesn't want that praise. He just wants to be pulling the strings behind the scenes. He wants to be the puppet master.
Yes, but we don't really find out why, do we? Not really.
And that's where it falls flat. It's that part of it is a bit undercooked.
Yeah,
which is a shame because it's a good setup.
I would say, going off what we said before, I think it's the villain plot is the reason why this film most likely is so divisive.
Falls, yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
and at the time, people were pissed about the suits blowing up.
Funny thing is I didn't actually get that when I saw it because I was just so done with the movie.
Yeah.
Like I was like, this is a good movie, but I'm just done with it. Like the part of the story that I enjoyed finished a long time ago, and I just need to get this bit over with. So when the suits blow up, I was like, oh yeah, it's the end of the movie. See ya, bye.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But like, why? Why are people so pissed?
Well, it's just at the time because they didn't know what was coming next necessarily. They were just, even though inevitably he was going to put more suits on going forward, I don't think that's a spoiler that Iron Man dons the suit again. But it just, everyone was just like, well, why are you ending it? There's so much more to tell. Like, because it feels so final on a surface level. A lot of people probably thought that this was it, and they're like, well, that's a bit of a weird way to end it when there's so much more to tell. Whereas knowing that it's not actually the end, but it's a point in Tony's life where he accepts who he is. He comes to terms with his demons, and the struggle he's been going through for the first 4 movies he's appeared in, leading up to this point, they resolve. And it's, the end of the beginning and the start of the second half,
Yeah.
Right, so the blowing of the suits is supposed to be symbolism of that, but it didn't translate well with a lot of people.
No.
Yes.
Yeah. I think because this was around the time, you remember in college, I built that Iron Man suit from like foam.
Yeah.
So that was around the release of this movie, actually. And what I kind of, in my mind, was going on was that scene where all of the suits kind of come together. For me, it's so awesome. He's got a suit with a bloody crab jaws on. He's got a suit for, it's a hunchback and it's like heavy lifting. He's got a suit that's like specifically for combat, hand-to-hand combat. That was just really great for me. And then at the end, he's like, all right, blow him up. And I'm like, what? Why would you do something like that? That was so cool, and now it's gone. It's like, oh, yep, we're done. Leave it. Just destroy it. And then the next movie he's in, which I believe is the next Avengers, I remember sitting there and I'm like, no, but he blew them up. He ended it. Why is he here now? Because when it came out, it didn't click for me. I was like, what? What's going on here?
Right.
Yeah, because there's more I've got to add on to this when we get to Age of Ultron, but I'll leave it for now. But I agree. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Subtlety, I guess. It's the fine line.
Yeah, because it's a symbolic thing, and as with my filmmaker brain, I love the symbolism of the suits blowing up, but logically, it's also a bit wonky.
Yeah. I'm seeing as we're on the villains at the moment, I just want to. I'm not sure if this is a controversial opinion or not, but I don't like the Extremis henchmen at all. I think I think they're terrible. Like
I prefer
whenever they came on screen, I just wanted to turn it off. I was like, I don't like, and that's the thing is I've noticed apart from the Avengers and maybe Thor, the villains so far have been really, really weak for me in the MCU. I know they get better, but it's just I just can't handle it. They're just so generic. They're so generic.
The thing is, I prefer. Excuse me. Not Justin Hammer. What's his name? Hammer in Iron Man 2. I prefer his military bots to the foot soldiers, the extremist foot soldiers in this, because there's nothing to either of them, but the design is cooler. They are very one note.
Well, the thing is, the only compliment I can give to those bots over these guys is that there was sort of a comedic value to them. Whereas, even if you tried to make these guys comedic, it wouldn't work because that's not what this film, at least what I was reading, that's not what this kind of film is trying to do. It's just, they were just so interrupting any scene that I was enjoying. And I was just like, of course they're in this room. They're like, oh, I'm hiding. I'm the villain person. And then they just did the climax of the story and is just, I don't understand what happens with Pepper Potts. Is she one of those extremist henchman now. Because that's what happens, isn't that how she like comes back?
Yeah, I was
She gets the powers.
yeah.
Right. That
Wait.
wasn't that. I don't think that was explained particularly well.
No, and when he's getting the reactor out of his chest, when he's monologuing, he says, "I got Pepper fixed, and I got myself fixed too." It's very slighted over. It is.
Right.
But because I had a theory watching it today, I was like, oh shit, maybe she jumps in Endgame, but this movie was like, nope, she got fixed, everything's fine, and it's like, well, can we see it? No.
And if she got fixed, like, then what's the threat? Those other guys, just capture them and inject them with
Yeah.
It's sort of that whole Pepper getting the powers thing really diminishes it.
Yeah. I'm glad that you guys agree with me on that because I was getting fucking pissed with those henchmen.
No,
like, I was just like,
it is just a little kind of crappy thing, like.
Ugh. Yeah. It's like a part of this film was trying to be like in the same tone as like, I don't know, like Logan or something. Maybe not that hardcore, but it was like in that same genre. But then it comes in like Iron Man 2 like stuff.
It's one of these things where it benefits hugely from being part of the MCU from the character's growth perspective, but from the point of an isolated movie in the story that they were trying to tell, it is a little bit trapped by the fact that it has to be a blockbuster.
That's part of the problem I had with First Avenger as well.
Yeah.
Because I didn't like I liked all the MCU stuff with that movie, but then like all the fucking Hydra shit I just didn't care about. I was like, this guy's just literally Hitler with a red skull, and the skull's not even it's not even realistic because like if you're saying that he got his head burnt, like why would it be that?
Is it any more realistic than an emaciated young Chris Evans getting flushed out just like that?
Yeah, but at least that was intentional. And steroids are real.
Some steroids?
If I burnt your head, it wouldn't look like Red Skull.
I'd be pretty pissed off.
Yeah, you'd look more like Davros, not Red Skull.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess it's just what my theory on it is. I just think I'm not a comic book person. That's the problem. And these movies take.
It seems like there's little leaps that are just a little bit too far.
Yeah, and these movies are taking characters and stories from the comics that work in comics, but maybe not in a complex film like Iron Man 3, which is supposed to be this film about Tony Stark's anxiety. It's like then you're gonna have these really generic villains that the tone just doesn't work.
Yeah,
I have a controversial statement about villains.
What?
I think this film would have been worse if the actual Mandarin was in it.
Well, I don't know anything about the actual Mandarin, though.
But
yeah,
in terms of thematically, with Trevor Slattery, this film's all about, the duality that you're facing with yourself, right? And then they've got the perception of the Mandarin, and it turns out to be a drunk old washed up actor. There's two sides. So thematically, that's cool. But also, if it was actually the Mandarin, then it would, of course, just end in the same way with the Mandarin, who was a much more powerful character, from what I understand, would sort of be diminished and not really translated well to film. He's someone who would have to be built up a lot more than just brief little snippets and then climax at the end.
Well, you didn't. I mean, the thing is, I don't know anything about the actual Mandarin, so I'm not saying you have to go by the source material. I'm just saying if you're going to change it, make it good. Don't make it shit.
See, I understood that reference, and I agree. If they had got the Mandarin and it was just all here's my rings and my fucking CGI powers. It would have been way worse. It would have been horrible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I probably would have had a problem with that too, because I would have
Yeah.
been disappointed. I'm like, the Mandarin was built up so well, but then he just turns
Yeah,
out to
and
be
then,
this generic monster. So it's like,
yeah,
so you get,
yeah,
so you,
exactly.
so in this film instead, what they did was they replaced one with another.
Yeah, I think with that, possibly they kind of went the lesser of the two evils. One being like, oh, here's this character built up over all
Okay,
the
I've got a
trailers
suggestion.
and all of
I've, su-
that.
I've got a suggestion. Why don't you go the Avengers route, take the villain, and make it more interesting?
How do you mean though?
Because in Thor, Loki was fine, but there was something off about him. But then in the Avengers, he's completely brilliant.
Well, that could be argued as well because that's Tom Hiddleston. He's like an A-rated actor. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's like one of the top of the line. He
but-
is one of the main
Yeah,
actors.
but
in the movie.
I didn't think that the guy playing Achilles was too bad. Like, I didn't think he was a bad actor. I just didn't care
Yes,
for the character.
this is a pretty good actor. Yeah, it's just that Iron Man as a trilogy, in a lot of ways, each film has the same villain.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
why I don't like them.
yeah, yeah.
And none of them, because the films are Iron Man, and it's about his struggle, often the films kind of neglect to really develop the villains. But the fact that they have the whole Travis Flannery thing adds an interesting and though enraging to a lot of people, I found very funny wrinkle in this whole grand scheme of things.
Okay, I guess so. It was funny.
Gillian
It was funny, but like it was definitely funny. But I just from that point on, like all the tension that the film had built was lost. I was just like, oh well, it's a joke now. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that there was so much going for this movie until that moment, and then from then on, it was just like it just felt so similar. Like it's like this was supposed to be the film that was gonna make Tony Stark like just the most interesting character like ever, and then from the point where the Mandarin is fake onwards, it just feels like it's Iron Man 2 2.0. That's how I felt about this movie. It was so frustrating. I was like, do they really have to do this? Like, it was going so well.
Yeah, it feels like also not studio interference, not like they changed it on set, tanked it like the Fantastic Four film or something like that. But it does feel like there were certain studio mandates that Shane Black had to adhere to when creating the story.
Right.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Eh.
And it's this kind of idea of, well, in terms of escalating the story, you have to have it get bigger and bigger in terms of the action scenes. But by doing that, what they actually did was diminish the character's personal drama by the end. So it got smaller and smaller in a lot of ways. It may have looked big and flashy, but it felt rather hollow. Like, almost like, I don't know, an Iron Man suit without a person inside of it. But the bigger it got, the smaller it felt. That being said, everything before that I love, and also I think Travis Flannery is hilarious. So even though that twist does sort of diminish the film, I enjoy it.
All right. I guess we'll move on to the next character. I mean, unless we got anything else to say about the Mandarin.
I have a small thing. Did you notice the tattoos on his chest?
Not the ones on his chest.
So, Adam, are you familiar with the I think he's a Fantastic Four villain, Fin Fang Foom?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when this movie first came out, I remember there were theories online that it was like another big reason that this film kind of dropped off was that this was like Marvel's attempt at it, but like their attempt was, oh, give him some dragon tattoos and fire breath. That's your Fin Fang Foom. which Connor, for you, Fin Fang Foom is hang on, I have it here.
Big old dragon, basically.
Yeah, he's like 40 foot tall. He's a massive green
He's a kaiju.
dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like Marvel was like, oh, we can fit that in too. Just give him a dragon tattoo. It's like, I don't know. To this day, I couldn't find any information like on that being legitimate, but it was just one of those little things like, hey, here's a little wink and nod, at this character we don't have rights to.
It's like how on Whiplash they on set they put Loki's tattoo on his neck, but then they CGI'd it out just because they backtracked on it.
Yeah, it's because to my knowledge, Killian doesn't have all of those powers that he does in the movie in the comics.
I mean, there's probably many versions of him, but that's actually.
Yeah. I mean, with all these characters, really, there's like literally a million different versions of different powers and moves, skills, and everything. But yeah, one of the things I remember reading, and I remembered it rewatching today, was the dragon tattoos were meant to symbolize this character. I think it's still under Fox, but Disney bought Fox, so maybe Disney has him back.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, that's all I wanted to add in.
I guess there's one other thing I will say is that this movie on rewatch might go down slightly, just because part of the reason why I love Act 1 so much is because I was so convinced about the Mandarin. Like, that introduction, his introduction is so strong. And now whenever I watch this movie again, I'm going to know that it's not real.
Yeah.
And
have you seen? Oh boy, I can't. You probably haven't. But there's a. So they used to do these things called one shots, which they do short films set in the MCU, and there's one called "Hail to the King." I'm not going to say anything about it, but I strongly recommend watching it. It might
give that
interest you.
Yeah, give that a watch.
Sounds familiar. I think I've heard something about.
It's all on YouTube. I think it's only like 10 minutes long, but it's all on YouTube and worth watching.
All right then. Maya Hansen. I believe this was the one. She was in the flashback and then she reappeared, right?
The botanist lady.
Yeah. What did we think of her?
Fine.
Yeah, she's all right. I mean, she didn't really have much. Literally, she was like, "Hey, I have Extremis," and Stark's like, "Awesome, thanks."
She's more of an exposition character.
Yeah.
Because often there are characters who have roles. There's the comedic relief. There's the hero. There's the romantic interest. She's the exposition.
Yeah.
Right, and that's completely the opposite of what you think, based on the fact that this film starts a flashback with her in it.
Yeah.
Which is another subversion.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I have nothing to say about it, really.
There's not much.
Tell you what, someone who did get a lot of screen time in this, surprisingly, was Happy Hogan.
Yay!
Yep.
Jon Favreau.
And it's great that he stayed around, even though he's not directing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was good comedic relief.
Yeah,
absolutely.
In that first half of the movie, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, that's it.
It's
really
funny, just in the flashback, how he had like the Pulp Fiction haircut and everything like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
He looks like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction in the flashback.
He was in it. I didn't know he was in it.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes with some of these MCU characters, it just takes me a few scenes to realize who they are. It was the same thing with Coulson. It was the same thing with Happy Hogan. It was the same thing with some of the other crossover characters as well. And Black Widow in Iron Man 2. Like, I was like, she looks so familiar. Like, this woman looks so familiar. She looks like... And I'm trying to think, like, what actress is in that? And then when I realized it was Scarlett Johansson, I'm like, oh, it's Black Widow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was her famous introduction.
Yeah. Yeah, just sometimes I just don't notice these characters, especially if it's a flashback where they're not looking like themselves. Yeah. I think there's one thing I will say about the Iron Man trilogy is it's interesting how this is 6 hours of screen time and there's still characters that I feel like I barely know.
Yeah,
It's strange. It's very strange.
that maybe has something to do with the very improvisational nature of the first two films, where it was very off the cuff. So it felt natural, but in terms of the story, you didn't actually really get to know these characters. Like, we don't actually know much about Happy Hogan other than he's a boxer and he's incredibly loyal.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I guess because it's part of the MCU, there's so much going on, it's hard to focus on things other than the mains.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, there's just one thing that puzzles me. Like 3 films, and I still hardly know some of these people. But you know, whatever. It's a nitpick. And the only other characters we want to talk about. Oh, there's the kid.
The kid.
Obviously.
Yeah.
The kid. Yeah.
I love how Tony did not give a shit about him.
Yeah.
He did, but Tony treated him the way he would treat any adult.
Yeah.
So he actually kind of respected the kid in that way. He didn't talk down to him and patronize him.
Yeah. I kind of saw that as like he was alone and he needed the perfect person to bounce off is someone that wouldn't, who doesn't really like, because if it was an adult, like adults are so, you know, I don't know what the word is, but basically a child would accept him as like, you know, I guess imaginary friend or just like this kid is like out in the country and he's like, oh well, it's Tony Stark and we'll just be friends. Like, and it's something that really was good for Tony's character at that point in time in the story.
Well, he needed someone to just kind of get all his, you know, someone to listen to him.
Someone completely unbiased,
Yeah, because if it was an adult that saw him, they'd just be like, you're a billionaire, get out of my house.
Well, they'd be like, oh, you're dead.
Yeah.
Whereas this kid's just like, oh, well, we can be friends.
Yeah.
And the kid doesn't have, like, this hero worship of Tony. He knows who he is, but he doesn't, like, you know, freak out.
Yeah. And he's also not shit. Like, sometimes kids can be really shit in movies. And this kid wasn't. He was fine.
He had good chemistry with Downey Jr., which also led to one of the funniest lines in the film. Where he said, you can't leave me, we're connected. And he's like, blah, 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 blah. And he says, I'm cold. And he says, I know. You know how I know? How? Because we're connected. The way he treats the kid just made me chuckle.
I can't remember what Stanley's cameo was in this one.
He was the judge in the modeling contest. He held up a number, I believe. He was on a monitor.
It was just very, like, nothing to do with the story.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It was just like a side thing.
This may have been...
Oh, there he is.
This may have been the one time I actually missed him. But I didn't...
It's very brief. He's only there for about 5 seconds. It's very, very brief.
Yeah. I mean, like I will repeat, I did watch this at like 1 a.m.
Yeah, no, well, his cameo wasn't even a speaking role in this film either, so...
Right, yeah. Is there... Okay, so the plot itself, we've gone through a lot of it. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else we want to talk about in regards to the plot if we move on to, you know, the more sort of physical stuff?
Sorry, you want it?
No, go ahead.
I didn't really have anything. I was just sort of thinking out loud.
Okay, you go, Anthony.
Oh, no, I just, because I, like, you know, seeing this, I had read the comics, and I heard Extremis, and I got really excited. And then, obviously, in this movie, Extremis is very different to in the comics. I was a little disappointed until Infinity War.
It's funny because I just don't remember. Like I saw Infinity War, but I don't remember what you're talking about. And there's just
No,
so
because
much. There's so much
they
that went
don't
over my head when I
they
watched
don't
Infinity
mention
War.
it at all in Infinity War, but it is in Infinity War. It's
Right.
in the comics, Extremis is the armor that he, in Infinity War, like right at the start, he's got the suit in his like jacket thing, and he clicks it, and it like grows over his skin.
It's also known as
Maybe.
the Bleeding Edge, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That in one of the comics, some of the comics, I think that's it's labeled the Extremis armor. And the whole comic thing is that the same character, Maya Hansen, gives him this chemical formula, and he, of course, uses it with his suit, and he can kind of summon it at will, instead of standing there and waiting 20 minutes for the machines to put it on him one by one.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say about the plot. I think I've gotten all the stuff off my chest that I really needed to.
Yeah.
Right. So this film is written by Drew Pearce and Shane Black.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know a lot about Drew Pearce. I didn't write anything down about him, but is he a particularly memorable name?
I know. I'm just looking at it now because I know his name from other stuff, but I'm not sure what it is. Oh, right. He wrote Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation.
Right.
And he's written bits and pieces for TV. But Rogue Nation was the one I knew him from because Mission Impossible went from kind of generic action movie series to really, really good randomly. It's
The
one of the best franchises.
Yeah, the only one I've seen is Fallout.
Oh mate, go back and watch Paris Protocol and Rogue Nation. They're really good.
Right. Okay. But yeah, no. And it's him and Shane Black who wrote this movie.
Yes.
Yeah. I just don't have any more to add on to what I already said about the way it's written. It was just great for a bit, and then it was frustrating, and then it ended. That's the outline for me.
Interesting.
Yeah, but there is one thing I can compliment heavily, and that's the direction by Shane Black specifically.
Yes.
Yes. Now I will slightly degrade that in the sense that I think this movie is very uncomfortable, but that might be part of the point. Like, it's not one that I enjoyed and had fun watching. It was one that I was, for the parts that I enjoyed, I was sort of invested in the story. Does that make sense? Like, it was one where I was extremely invested, but it wasn't one that I had fun watching. Like, this was quite a miserable watch.
It's deliberately quite bleak.
Yeah.
It is very funny as well, but it is intentionally bleak.
But in terms of compliments, yeah, the direction was very different to the other Iron Man films. It was much more creative. And
the thing is, if you watch this film up until the final action scene, the sort of part where you fell off, the rest of it is so clearly a Shane Black movie. He's done only a few films he's directed. He's written a lot, but he directed a film called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which Robert Downey Jr. is in, which is it's the same kind of grim tone, but also very amusing with lots of layers throughout it. And he also did another film which I adore called The Nice Guys, which is a funny cop film with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. And it's Shane Black's style, his fingerprints are all throughout this film, and I really appreciate it because he's like, other than The Predator, which was a garbage fire monstrosity,
Yeah.
I really enjoy his films.
Anthony, you going to say anything?
No, I was gonna say though, it is pretty clear, kind of what was Shane Black, and what was Drew Pearce
In the writing.
in the yeah.
And what do you mean by that exactly?
Well, there is a point, and I think it's like right after Tony gets into Missouri or wherever he goes, that the story just kind of drops off, and it's like, oh, and in the B plot, it's Pepper and the other Maya. Pepper and Maya get kidnapped. That's kind of when it's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Where's the rest? And it, like you said, it just kind of slows down and it lumbers along.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it necessarily slows down. It does kind of, but it just... The entire tone of the first hour is just lost in the writing.
Yeah.
It just doesn't continue. It's really disappointing because I was really enjoying it, and then it just stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it definitely feels like, again, as I mentioned before, there are certain studio mandates that Shane Black and Drew Pearce had to adhere to, and Drew Pearce was more the blockbuster side, while Shane Black was more the character side.
Right. And I just feel like those two styles just don't coexist for me.
No, you're right.
It's very hard to do both at the same time and make it work.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I would agree, Anthony. It was definitely, looking back on it, you can definitely tell the difference.
Yeah.
But in terms of his direction, I would say Shane Black was very, very, very good.
Yeah.
It's one of my biggest compliments of the movie. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
Regardless of which scene it is, it always looks great. But very bleak and not fun.
It's cold.
Yeah. It was cold, but strangely enough, it's cold, but most of it's lit pretty orange.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is just, Iron Man, that's one thing that's sort of consistent with the first one. The first two, rather, even though it's a completely different visual tone as well, it has that slight orangey glow to it, probably one of the filters they used on their cameras and whatnot, but there is a little bit of tonal consistency in the reading, though it is clearly its own beast.
Yeah, and I also think that this is a very weird film to come after the Avengers.
That's why I kind of love it. Because it's not, other than, the final action scene, which is definitely the weakest part, it's not, I don't think, what anyone would expect.
No. So different to the Avengers. I'm not sure if I remember much about this, but the music was by Brian Tyler.
Yes.
And
I love the soundtrack to this film.
Okay, I need you to sort of take the head on this because I don't remember a single track at all.
So there's lots of little individual pieces which are nice. But the main Iron Man thing, the dun da 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 dun 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 dun. It has a very metallic and clanking sound, and it's got the sort of heavy metal facade of the previous two films, and has gone full force into this heroic idea, but it still has this metal clanking, sort of evoking, the hammer hitting the steel, or iron, rather. And it's one of my favorite MCU soundtracks. I absolutely love the theme, and the fact that they have a 70s sort of funk version of it in the closing credits as well. I really appreciate it. It's fun. But yeah, it's one that really sticks with me.
Right, yeah. What about you, Anthony? Are you big on the score?
Yeah, there's 3 scores of the whole Marvel universe that I find myself humming quite recently too. Is this one, Doctor Strange and Ant-Man, and I know you haven't seen the other 2 yet, but This one's that theme that Adam was singing. That is very catchy, and it's good, and it does fit, the whole theme of the movie, which is kind of breaking out of the armor, the suit. He is not a suit. He's a dude. He's, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I just it was sometimes I think it's with this series that I'm doing when I'm watching films I haven't seen. Quite often the score is the last thing I think about because I'm trying to understand the story. So I don't get that subtlety yet, probably. The only film so far where the score has gotten my attention is obviously the Avengers, because everyone knows the score of the Avengers.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because there was a viral video a few years back about how no one knows the Avengers theme. Yet now, for pretty much anyone of our generational age group, they would probably know it maybe before they guess Star Wars. I reckon. It's
I'm not in tune with pop culture, so I wouldn't be able to confirm or deny that.
I think that goes with what we were saying on the previous podcast for the Avengers. Was this is one of those scores that this is the Star Wars of our time, if you will. It's like a universal kind of movie, and in itself a universal theme. You hear someone humming it, you know what they're humming. You know what they're thinking about.
Yes.
Right, yeah. Anything else we want to say about the music of Iron Man 3?
I wish it was longer. I wish there was a bit more, because the main theme is lovely and there's some incidental stuff which is great, but the incidental stuff's not as memorable. Like if someone played me a piece of music from the incidental score, I wouldn't be able to identify which scene it came from, but that main theme is awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right then. This is the. So yeah, the next section is obviously the trivia, and it's gonna be a little bit disorganized because I didn't have time to write it down, so I've just got the trivia here. I'm gonna skim through it.
Let's do it.
So this is the first movie in the Iron Man franchise not to be directed by Jon Favreau, who turned down the offer for this movie in order to direct Magic Kingdom. I have never heard of Magic Kingdom. I have no idea what it's about.
I thought it was a movie called Chef that he did, but I guess. Yes.
But he later admitted that not directing allowed him to have more fun with Happy Hogan, saying that he was like a proud grandfather who doesn't have to change the nappies but gets to play with the baby.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. It's a
good analogy. Yeah.
The Mandarin bears a tattoo on the back of his neck with Captain America's shield and an anarchist A symbol in the center instead of a star.
Mm.
Yep, that happened.
Yep. All right.
The idea that Happy Hogan's favorite show is Downton Abbey was a suggestion of Jon Favreau, who was actually a big fan of the series.
Great.
The first cut was 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Now I know people complain about the length of blockbusters, but I can't help but wonder, would that have been a more satisfying film?
Maybe.
But then again, that's the first cut. But if they kept going with this, retweaked the stuff that they cut out as opposed to just completely removing it, then maybe we may have had a more full and satisfying conclusion when they got to that big blockbuster evening.
I'm not sure about that. Just based on the way the movie ended, I can't see how. Like, we may have gotten more good stuff out of it, but I don't see how it would end differently.
Sure.
We still would have gotten the extremist henchman. We still would have gotten Pepper subversion, and we still would have gotten them blowing up the suits and stuff. Like, it still would have ended the same way.
I may have got more character stuff from Tony. Is my counter to that.
Right. Do you think part of the problem with this movie is that Shane Black's idea to take Tony Stark in this direction didn't have a natural end?
It's the thing is about that is it's so conclusive, but Marvel couldn't A because it was their biggest moneymaker at the time, and B because they had further plans, they couldn't allow him to make it as final as it should have been.
Bloody money.
I'm not saying anything about what they do after Iron Man, but at this point, this seemed like a very, it's a logical conclusion to his arc. It's just a bit rushed and also left more open than I think the initial intention was.
This movie was originally budgeted at $140 million, but thanks to the Avengers being such a big hit, it was up to $200 million.
That's really good because with kind of what happens if you had shoddy CG, that would just like downplay the movie a whole lot.
Yeah, imagine
like
how
it'd be way worse than.
Imagine the same movie, but the attack on his house doesn't look the way it does.
Yeah,
that'd be so disappointing.
Be like, well, yep.
This movie was heavily edited for Chinese audiences. The Chinese edit has additional scenes featuring the character Dr. Wu and his assistant.
Well, the Chinese market is a big moneymaker. And culturally, I don't know where they would stand necessarily the Chinese senses of the magic character. So I don't know if that had any play in completely re-editing it. But it makes sense that they have more with those characters for the Chinese market, business-wise. Whether or not it improved or lessened the film, I don't know. I haven't seen that cut, so I can't say.
No. Originally, this movie was intended to start with flashbacks of Tony's youth. Another idea considered was to start this movie with Tony landing in Tennessee, and another had Tony cleaning up landmines with the Stark logo on them, as an allusion to the many explosive elements from his past waiting to detonate.
I like all those ideas, but my favorite one was his childhood or his youth, because I want to see more Howard stuff.
Yeah, well, we got a bit of him in the first Avenger.
Yeah. Well, yes.
And we got one shot of him in Iron Man 2.
But
we got like a little couple scenes in Iron Man 2, I think.
Well, there was that one scene with the videotape. That's all I remember.
Yeah, no, but there's like multiple videotapes. Like there's one of him doing the legit, like, this is the future of tomorrow.
Yeah,
it has
right.
this and this. And then there's like another one when he goes, now I'd like to show you my ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. I setting myself up for failure, expecting him to be in Iron Man 3 more?
Howard Stark?
Yeah, I was expecting more with that to do with that.
Yeah, no, I think Marvel likes to when they have a character dead, they'll keep it that way. They'll be like they are dead.
I'm not saying I'm not saying bring him back. I was just like,
no.
I just had this feeling that there was going to be more Howard Stark, flashbacks and.
I just think at this point, they wanted to focus on Tony's issues with Iron Man as opposed to Tony's issues with Howard.
Yeah.
Right. It's just that the way that you talked about it in Iron Man 2 made me think that it was going to be in this one more.
Oh, well, that was my mistake because it obviously didn't spoil anything, but I was trying to set it up as this is a much more Tony-centric film. It's a character.
Right. I thought you meant literally.
Right.
And then I also coupled that with the fact that Anthony loves Iron Man 3, and I know that Anthony loves stories between fathers and sons. So I put those pieces together, and that's what I got, and I was wrong.
There's definitely there's definitely an MCU film in the future, which I have a feeling you love. But we'll get to that when we get to it.
I think we already alluded to this in the last one, didn't we, Anthony?
If it deals with fathers and sons, I know exactly which one. Anyway.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about, Adam. I'm not saying anything, but I understood that reference.
Yes. But what my question was I setting myself up for failure thinking it was going to be in this movie?
Kind of. But that's the thing about any sequel, is you're going to go in with certain expectations and never necessarily going to all be met.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's obvious.
Well, like that's exactly why we did what we did for The Last Jedi. You remember? We devoided ourselves of any possible anything to do with that movie. And then, you know how it turned out. But whatever. My point is, if you want, do it again with Endgame. That's what I'm doing. I'm deleting all social media, deleting everything, up until I go into the cinema and see it.
Well, yeah. I'm not talking necessarily about spoilers, because that's a whole different problem. Anticipation and spoilers are two different things. Because I had no like hint as to what was going to be in Iron Man 3. I just had ideas of what it might be, like theories.
Yeah. Well, also, to be fair, this isn't just us, alluding towards a more character-driven film. It's Iron Man 1 and 2 as well, because Tony's estranged relationship with his father and how he's very much a solo figure. He sort of takes pride in himself, even though we as an audience know that's not necessarily true. The logical progression would be he'd learn more about himself through Howard. So that kind of makes sense. But no, they just went in a different direction.
Yeah, and I also think another reason why this film is so divisive is that this film doesn't do what the other Iron Man films did of the whole AC/DC rock concert Iron Man tour thing. It doesn't do any of that at all. And I think that's what a lot of people loved about the character. So this film completely goes against that. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that's a good thing for the story. Well, at least the ideas of the story. But I think a lot of people went into this thinking, yeah, we're getting another one of those, and then that's not what they had.
And that's because the thing is, the way I view Iron Man's trilogy is it's actually 4 movies. It's Iron Man 1, then Iron Man 2 is more just Iron Man 1.5 in my mind, and then the real Iron Man 2 is Avengers, and then Iron Man 3 comes around as a reaction to Avengers. And so through the events of Avengers, we see him. He comes in and Shoot to Thrill, I think he lands in Avengers when he fights Loki with Cap. And then obviously he nearly dies in the portal. And, he sees that will be in his imagination that mess him up. So as soon as he goes to that portal with the missile, AC/DC died. The rock and roller part of him died. And that's what I really like about this, is it's that whole changing.
Yeah, I mean, I like that too. It's just that part of his character was so popular. I think that's why some people were turned off by this movie, because they wanted that character to always be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think as well, though, with any character, if you get invested in them, you're in it for the, and excuse my kind of illusion here, you're in it for the end game. You're there with the character through ups and downs. So during Avengers, when he goes through that portal, you as the viewer, you're like, oh shit, is he okay? He's just gone into space without a, oxygen tank or whatever. He's just in his suit. You see him pass out. You go, oh shit, is he okay? You come back to Iron Man 3 and you're like, oh my god, that just happened. Now he's dealing with it, obviously. And, if you've seen Avengers beforehand, like we all have, you kind of know where it's going in terms of his feeling that the whole rock and roll facade is that's done.
This is an interesting one. Shane Black described this movie as a Tom Clancy thriller with the focus on real-world type villains and not 2 men in iron suits fighting each other. Even though the climax kind of does that anyway.
Which again further goes into what we were saying about seems to be a disconnect between Shane Black and the MCU. That's not to say Shane Black was a bad choice, because I think he did wonderful things for the Iron Man character. But he had to be beholden to that climax.
Shane Black initially said that he had no intention of doing the Mandarin at all, and the character's reputation as a racial stereotype as the reason.
I mean, that's a fair enough reason. But the thing is, I kind of prefer what they did here as to say, look, this isn't actually the Mandarin, as opposed to what Sam Raimi did in Spider-Man 3, when he didn't want to put Venom in, and he just made Venom, Topher Grace, and it sucked. Though I will defend Spider-Man 3, it has nothing to do with Venom, because the whole Venom subplot is dick.
Yeah,
but yes.
yeah, no, it's not good.
But yeah, yes, it's evident that he was hesitant about the Mandarin.
I believe Rebecca Hall was the actress who played what's her face?
Yes.
Maya Hansen.
So she says that her character was originally going to be the lead villain in earlier drafts of the scripts, but her role was reduced and the lead villain became male when Studio Suits insisted that kids wouldn't buy a figure of a female villain.
That's dumb.
That is pretty stupid, because I think she could have done really well as the villain,
Absolutely, and because the thing is, sure, Guy Pearce does a fine performance, but he's just another guy in a suit. Whereas even though she would just be a woman in a suit, there's something a little bit different than the previous two villains.
Yeah, I'm just thinking though, would because then you don't have the subplot of Pepper Potts and the guy. What would you replace that with? You can't replace that with Tony Stark, because he's off doing his other thing in this movie.
But you could still have it just be in the non-romantic context. You could still have her and Pepper be, business partners, a friendship bonding.
Yeah.
And she could have this whole thing of she fully infiltrates her way into Stark Industries almost, because she says stuff that Pepper aligns herself with, and Pepper doesn't realize until it's too late what she's actually up to.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Unlike Iron Man and Iron Man 2, Industrial Light and Magic was not involved with the film's visual effects. Instead, it was Digital Domain and Weta Digital. Obviously, Weta is Wellington.
That's us, New Zealand. Of two minds about this. I have... So you know how I was talking about how in Iron Man 2 the suits felt heavy?
Yeah.
They don't as much in this one. They don't feel as tangible.
Yeah.
They still, except the Iron Patriot is probably the exception, but there's a little bit less weight to the design. And I don't know if that's just to do with the movement of the CGI, or if that comes purely down to the concept design. Who knows? But I do prefer the way the CGI suits feel in Iron Man 1 and 2 than I do in 3.
Shane Black wanted to do a little more of the Demon in the Bottle storyline, but Disney nixed it as it was already somewhat covered in Iron Man 2.
Yeah, the Demon in the Bottle is when Tony Stark became an alcoholic in the comics.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can kind of see their argument, but in a way, I think it kind of in both ways it could have worked, and it also could have made the story more violent. Because then a lot of people's brains would probably go to, oh, his anxiety is due to his alcoholism, as opposed to his anxiety and his alcoholism is due to the trauma, So that could have got muddled. But I think, Shane, if any director / writer was going to do that in a way that would be interesting, building up on the Iron Man to Shane Black to play the guy.
This is the first time Samuel L. Jackson did not appear in an Iron Man related movie. So Nick Fury makes no appearance here. But I feel like he wouldn't really suit the tone that this thing was going for.
Well, Nick Fury, he'd feel too impervious, because he's got shield, which for lack of a better term, it's a layer of safety shield. It's kind of like a safety net, even though they're the shady governmentals in Avengers. Shield would kind of protect Iron Man, and by just completely taking that element out of the story, it made Iron Man feel more isolated.
Several scenes in the trailers didn't make the final cut. For example, a scene where the Mandarin is seen rising up from a throne of sorts in an Oriental-esque chamber was at no point included in the movie, and neither was a scene where the same Mandarin is hanging someone's dog tags on a knife embedded in a wall. And Iron Patriot doesn't lift up the mask off his helmet while in the suit at any point.
Yeah, that's obviously after watching you can kind of see why. And like I said before, it's kind of before it came out, they had this big build up to like, oh, we have the Mandarin now, he's part of the MCU as well. And I think when this movie hit, they were just like, oh, well, he's not actually that character, so we probably shouldn't have him with a knife and dog tags,
Anthony, am I accurate in saying that the Mandarin is the Snoke of this franchise?
Although
to be fair, at least there wasn't an entire build up to him in a previous film.
I think the biggest build up was the trailer, and to my memory, there was probably only 2 or 3 of those that were heavily like the Mandarin,
Yeah, but it wasn't like he was in scenes in Iron Man 2,
No, I think they handled it very well as well. You know what I mean? Like, they could have just been like, oh, it's nobody. Instead, they're like, oh, it's a drunk hobo. And that's like, for me, that's pretty funny. I know for a lot of people, they were pissed off at that. But for me, I have a good chuckle when Ben Kingsley's on screen as a drunk.
Ben Kingsley is so good in this movie. Like, when Rhodey's got the gun to his head, and he just cheers because he's watching the football match in the background.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. and that's what makes him better than Snoke is we get a backstory to Trevor Slattery.
Yeah.
I think comparing...
Whereas when Snoke dies, that's it. He's gone.
I think comparing this character to Snoke is like comparing a $100 note to a piece of shit you found on the side of the road.
Is that what you really feel?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Oh, just going through all the trivia here takes a while, especially when I haven't written it down, because I'm so disorganized. Tom Hooper. Are either of you aware with the director called Tom Hooper?
He's the guy who did the King's Speech, isn't he?
Probably. He was considered to direct this movie.
Tom Hooper. Weird choice.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Is it as weird as Edward Norton?
Oh god. I'd actually argue, yeah, like that it's around the same kind of awkwardness, and like that's not the guy you want for this movie.
The thing is, Tom Hooper's a very good director. If he's the guy who I think he is, the King's Speech, Les Miserables guy.
Yeah, but Edward Norton's also a very good actor. It's just he's not Bruce Banner.
Not anymore.
No.
Yeah, well, I hopefully never again.
Yeah, God. We're just talking about, like, imagine if he was in the Avengers. It'd be so weird.
It would be weird watching him interact with Downey Jr. because they'd both be fighting for the top spot.
Oh, God.
It's just weird to think of Edward Norton and not Mark Ruffalo in that movie.
And the thing is, Mark Ruffalo just exemplifies the kind of the nature of the Bruce Banner so much better. He's got that, awkward sort of dweebishness that is the complete opposite of what Hulk is.
Yeah.
He's great.
Mm. And I guess that'll be all the trivia for Iron Man 3. So I guess it's time for conclusions and ratings out of 10. Who wants to go first? All right, you go first, Anthony.
Okay, I did think about this one all day. I'm actually going to give it a 7 out of 10.
And what's your conclusion for that? Why is it a 7?
Like I said, and like you said as well, the start, very strong start. You've got a PTSD Tony Stark. He's still freaking out over what happened in Avengers. He at the beginning as well, it like alludes to him working on this house protocol program, which is all the suits. I thought that was cool. I didn't get that the first time. It's a multiple view thing that you pick up. Some of the characters were off, like way off. The ending is just actually if the movie was in thirds, the third part was just
Act 3.
Don't
Act
like
3. Yeah.
Yeah, Act 3. Didn't like that. The Mandarin, I will say this, wasn't the character I thought, but Ben Kingsley, he did what he did with it, and he did it damn well. So yeah, honestly, just the villain, which was Killian, I was kind of like, really? Come on, another one of these? I think that's, for me, what brought it down to a 7. Did you say 7? I said 7, right?
Yeah, 7.
Yeah, that's kind of, for me, what brought it down all the way to a 7. As well as the weird kind of like, now my suits explode, yay. It's a lot of the kind of third act stuff is what puts it to a 7. And then, exact same could be said for the introduction in the first half, is what brings it up to a 7, if you kind of know what I'm talking about there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's a 7 for me for Iron Man 3.
Right, yeah. Your turn, Adam.
I really enjoyed this film. It does fall apart very much so in the final sort of 20 minutes. However, the resolution that Tony's character gets to, that I am Iron Man, recontextualized and repurposed, is a beautiful way to end his story. So even though I don't like the final action scene and don't like the main villain, I do like, I love what they do with Tony's character, his whole story, stripping it back to the basics to evaluate who is he. And the side characters, for the most part, really fun, happy, functional story. It moves along at a very brisk pace that I really enjoy. The direction is slick. The action scenes, though, are tiresome with the final act. The action scenes are really cool, especially the plummeting people on Air Force One. But overall, it was nothing like I was expecting coming off the Avengers. I loved it for it. I didn't feel disappointed or deflated by it. I sort of felt like, ooh, this is great. Also, the Mark Ruffalo cameo in the mid-credits were brilliant. So I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10.
Rightio. This, for me, is the weirdest MCU film I've ever seen, probably, because it's one that really tears me apart when I think about it. Because the first half I really enjoyed, and then the second half I was quite sour on for a lot of it, and it just wasn't the film I wanted it to be at the end of the day. I don't think it's a bad film. I don't think it's even not. I actually still think it's quite good. It's just, unfortunately, there's so many factors in this film that just make it not as satisfying as I wished it was. And I appreciate its efforts, and I appreciate what Shane Black was trying to go for with this movie. But sadly, by the end, I wasn't satisfied. So I'll probably give it a 6.5.
Right.
Because I've got to be honest, like, even though I respect the first half, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it as a whole. It's not a movie I particularly like. I found it really uncomfortable to sit through,
Right.
and really awkward, just because it was so hard to get my head around what this whole story was about, because there was so much going on within the story, and so much was changing as it was going along. And it's just not a kind of it's not the kind of storytelling that I appreciate. I'm more about I don't like it when a director lies to me, and for the purpose of like a joke, or just to make things interesting. Like, I like genuine storytelling, and I wish that the first half of this film and the second half of this film were consistent in that way. And I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more had it been that way. But I still think it's better than Iron Man 2. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
But purely because of the second half, I can't say I like it as much as Iron Man 1. So I'll give it a 6.5. It's halfway between the two.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, by no means a bad film, just a frustrating one. But speaking of frustrating, potentially, the next one is obviously Thor: The Dark World.
Oh God.
Which will I'm sure will be interesting.
Yeah, that'll be not fun.
Yeah. Now, as far as I'm aware, Adam, you're not available tomorrow night, are you?
No, unfortunately not.
Yes. And Anthony, I think you said to me you don't give a shit about doing a review for that, do you?
You know what? This has grown on me. I'm willing to do another one tomorrow if you want me on.
Okay.
These are fun. I've gotten used to them now.
Awesome. That's great to know. Yeah, Adam, I'm just curious, are you particularly bothered about being on a Thor: The Dark World review, or can you skip it?
I have slightly unconventional opinions about it, but I'm not so passionate about them that I desperately need to be on.
Yes, because
it's like First Avenger. When we get to Ragnarok or maybe Age of Ultron, I can explain what I feel about it.
Right. Yeah. And the only reason why I say I'm a little bit like not sure is that I don't want, because I know that Callum, he's not going to be there tomorrow, and he's not going to be there the next day. And I'm just, even though I would really like to get Dark World over and done with tomorrow, I'm also like, I kind of feel bad if he misses Winter Soldier, because I know he loves that film. So I'm not sure what I should do about that. But anyway, I'll leave the audience on that cliffhanger. They just won't know. You won't know what's going to happen. Next time it's Thor: The Dark World, and you'll find out when it is.
You'll never see him coming.
You'll never see it coming. So, see you next time for that one.
Peace.